welcome to Delta Lodge Outdoors. I'm your host, Julius Craig. This is a show where we attempt to bring quality information on topics to people and work and listen from our viewers and guests on what's going on in the industry and just overall have fun. You might learn something, you might not, but we're going to have fun doing it. Hey everybody, welcome to Delta Lodge Outdoors. This is episode 2 of season 3 technically. So second episode of 2025. On today's episode I want to talk about antler point restrictions, or APRs in short, and what they are and my opinion and thoughts on them, and would love to get some feedback from the listeners about their opinions and thoughts on them, and if they think they work or don't work or whatever it is, that your thoughts are on it. So with that, we're going to dive right into it. It's an antler point restriction, or APRs, regulates the limit. It's regulations that limit the number of antler points a hunter can harvest to protect the younger male deer. Some places have point restrictions. Some have inch, like a spread restriction, and that's a little different than an APR because it's off a spread, not the points. The general goal of an antler restriction is to protect younger bucks from harvest. In more specific cases, they are designed to protect the higher quality younger aged bucks, and allow the harvest of lower quality bucks at any age and the harvest of higher quality older age bucks. With that, like I said, each one is a little different, and this is some stuff coming from the Meateater website, and Wired to Hunt. Hunters who push for the antler-based restrictions often dream of record book bucks, or bulls shredding the bark, with elk, because they have them on elk too. The expectations of antler restrictions often shrivel to disappointment. After all, western states mostly credit record book elk to limited access hunts. Limited ability to hunt's gonna give you limited hunters and limited stuff, so limited limits of kills, so they're going to age out, so I can understand that. The top 10 states for record book whitetails impose few or no antler restrictions, unless you count the 3-inch spike rule, according to the Boone and Crockett Club's trophy search. The number one whitetail state since 1999 is Wisconsin, with 1,189 typical and non-typical entries. That's actually surprised me, I did not know that. And it has no antler restrictions. The other top BNC states this century are Illinois at 874, Ohio at 804, Kentucky at 741, Iowa at 714, Indiana at 632, Missouri at 596, Kansas at 582, Minnesota 486, Texas at 423. Half a century of tests. How do we know all that? It's because hunters and wildlife managers nationwide spent the past half century debating it, talking about the restrictions. Even though antler-based restrictions ensure males make up a higher portion of the land, most get shot at 2.5 years old when their antlers meet the harvest criteria. Third, most western wildlife agencies won't consider or embrace widespread APRs for mule deer. So with that, if you look at the list of the top 10s, and like I just went over, the top 10 Boone and Crockett states since 2000, basically 99, is Wisconsin, then Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, Iowa, Indiana, Missouri, Kansas, Minnesota, and Texas. None of these have APRs. But what they do all have in common, Ohio, Kentucky, Kansas, parts of Missouri, Wisconsin, mostly Iowa, Indiana, Texas is on the border of it. Most of these are like agricultural states. So you have way more production of higher quality nutrients, therefore. Article I read the other day was 4-year-old deer between at 8% protein during the growing period and bump them up to 18% protein, I think was the difference, is over 20 inches of growth. So in the same growing period. So, if it's a 4-month growing period, 3-month, whatever it is, it's going to be up to 20 inches, maybe more. And that's just at from 8% to 18% protein. I think was the number 8 is 18%. But it's like, so that's why when you get into it, hunting fresh clear cuts usually produces the year after you clear cut something. That first year of growth, there's usually way bigger deer in the area because all the phosphates and nutrients that were usually out of their reach are ground level now because it's all coming back up out of the ground for regrowth. So your protein percentages are 18 to 22%. So that's why you see larger deer. Prime example of that on private property that I've seen personally is several years back, the place my wife's family owns in Shreveport, they had clear cut it. That season, following the clear cut, both my brother-in-laws killed great deer on it. One killed a 150 something inch 8-point. The other one killed 165 inches drop tine 9, minimum 4-year-old deer. Well, you figure it went from just the normal browse of 8 to 10% up to 18 to 22%. So each of those deer packed on minimum 20 inches more antler growth than what they normally put on. So 130, 145 inch deer was what they would have been on time frame had it not been clear cut the year before. Mississippi State College does Mississippi State University does a podcast, and they have a whole episode dedicated to that, and it's some really good information. I suggest you look it up. I've firsthand seen it, so I know what it does, and that's why I like hunting public land. I will hunt close to where the clear cuts were and are, not just for the cover, the food crops there. And if you're going to hunt public land, you have to find what they're eating. That's a whole series in itself. But back onto the thing with antler point restrictions, I personally don't think they work. I think you get more out of a spread restriction than you can a point restriction, because it's got to meet, say if it meets 4 points on one side, it could be a really nice 2.5-year-old that's a 8-point, 10-point, whatever, and you just took a nice, but he met the antler point restrictions. But if he had to be 15, 16 inch inside spread, as that 2.5-year-old, he, even at an 8 or 10 point, he probably won't reach it. I have an 11 point hanging on my wall that I shot several years back that wouldn't reach. He's 14 inches inside, but he's 11 point. So he'd make the APR, but he wouldn't meet a spread requirement. And he was killed in a state that doesn't have that. But what I'm getting at is APRs to me do not make for sound judgment on deer and growth. I agree with the stuff from the professionals here, and what they say about it is just you want to protect the younger deer up to like 18 months old, but if you got the right soil conditions and everything, they can produce really nice deer at a young age. So then you're taking out, because he met the APR because he had this many points. But if you do it as a spread, then it's going to be, if you're going to implement it as a spread, it would be better. But if you look at states that are not having problems or killing regularly big deer, they don't have any restrictions whatsoever. And it's like where I was talking about the Mississippi College State University, Bronson Reed is who does it, and something he said is regulations based on antler points alone can cause the most collateral damage. The number of points is the antler characteristic least correlated with age. Yearling bucks can carry from 2-inch spikes to 10-point basket racks. To protect those. Sorry, I had to answer a text from my wife. I have dinner cooking up at the house while I'm recording this, so she texts me, asked a question. But it's like, to protect more yearling bucks, as he stated, more yearling bucks, researchers prefer antler criteria such as minimum spread, which what I was talking about earlier, between the main beams or the beam's total length. Those features, as well as the beam's base circumference, correlate well with age, Strickland said. Like I was saying, I had a small 11 point that he wouldn't have met a spread, but he met the API. So Mississippi does, that's why Mississippi replaced its original APR program which exposed bucks to harvest if their rack carried 4 or more total points. Bucks in Mississippi's soil-rich Delta region must now have a minimum 12-inch spread or 15-inch main antler beam. Bucks elsewhere in Mississippi must have at least 10-inch spread or 13 beam. Colorado had to tackle theirs. That makes bull elk legal once they have 4 points on either side. Colorado Parks and Wildlife agencies added an option about 10 years later because they originally did it in 86, so in around 96. Bulls with a brow tine measure at least 5 inches are also legal. The 4.5-inch brow rule covers all elk zones except those with limited draw regulations. So that way it helped get the age up. So Pennsylvania's had success with it. They quickly achieved its deer management goals after imposing 3 and 4 point APRs in 2002. Still, hunter satisfaction remains mixed and fixed. 60% of our hunters like the APR, and that hasn't changed since before the rules went in, said the professor at Penn State, Dwayne Diefenbach. We found that hunters like or dislike APRs is based mostly on their opinion of APRs, not their experience with them. I've had both. I think the biggest thing that people need to learn to do is there's 2 things. Kill it. You can go with the kill what makes you happy, but if you're looking for trophy deer, you need to know what's trophy relevant in your area. Your area may not produce 160-inch deer, or they may not be common. Let's take Iowa for example. Iowa's known for producing monsters. Is in the top 10 list there that I just went over also. But an Iowa hunter can't go to the Gulf area of Texas or Florida or Louisiana and expect the same outcome that he'd get up there. But you also can't take a guy that's from those areas and him go up there and he's in 130-inch deer, he's excited. 140-inch, sorry I dropped something. 140-inch deer, he's excited or whatever, maybe 150 and he takes that on his first day when there's potentials of way bigger. So that's the quality, and that's even just using public land, for example, not just private, but even on public land, because it leaves, there's so much that is there. So we have to show discretion as a hunter ourselves. APRs are only as good as you allow them to be. If a hunter's gonna, the hunter has to make the choice too. It's I hunt a lot of public land. I've let a lot of small bucks walk on public land that I know are going to get shot as soon as they round the corner. And I've seen them hanging in camp on public land that I let walk. Spikes, year and a half, 2.5-year-old deer. So it's like, but you hunt, you can't judge somebody else for shooting what they shoot. That's my thing on APRs. I think that I agree with through the Meateater stuff. I don't really think an APR helps age class of deer. I think if you're going to go with limitations, you do spreads and inches. The inches on spreads are main beam length, and they have to be for the area they're in. Because just like Mississippi, for example, the Delta grow deer bigger, faster. So what would be 3.5 down south would be the size of a 2.5-year-old in the Delta. South Louisiana, same way, but they don't have APRs or inch restrictions. So it's like in certain parts of Texas be the same way. So you have to, if you're going to run inch restrictions or APRs, you have to make sure that they coincide with the area you put them in. I believe that APRs do not work. I believe that if you're going to regulate it anyway, it should be under inches for the main beam length or spread, regulated to the area you're in. But it also goes to hunters. Hunters are going to hunt the way they hunt. Everybody hunts different. Like I said, growing up in South Louisiana, then moving to Oklahoma, it's 2 totally different solid deer up here. Going on trips to Colorado, I've never hunted it, but I've been up there and I've scouted and I've looked and enjoyed family vacations in public land areas that what I think is a monster is just an average deer. So you also have to research the area you're in. Just like the area I live here in Oklahoma, I killed 30, 35 inch 10 point this year. Average deer, because of the area I live in. I was, and sorry, excuse me. Oddly enough, I never saw his head. The way he come out and turned up, I actually thought I shot a doe. I text my wife and my youngest son that he was hunting at the box stand. I was hunting in my saddle and shot him, shot the deer, and I text both of them and said I shot a doe. So I didn't know it was a buck until I got down to get it. How I missed that, like, it was dusk dark, shot the deer like 150 to 200 yards. I'd have to, I didn't scope it in exactly, range find it, but it was between 150 and 200 when I shot him at dusk dark. Knew it was a deer, was sure of my shot, dropped him in his tracks. Did not know it was a buck. The deer was 3.5 years old. Nice deer. Next year would have been a really nice deer. But I also have some 160-inch bucks running around here. But it's the area I'm in. So if you're going to take in APRs, you also have to look at the area you're in, how fast they grow, because like we said, in the Delta of Mississippi, they were getting to the APR restrictions still at a young age. They were still killing 1.5-year-old deer that met the APR. So they went to inch, with spread and time and main beam length, which makes it harder on it makes it, hunters have to look at what they're shooting now. Like, first, they really have to be able to judge it and see. So what they did too by doing that was they limited shooting younger, borderline deer, because people don't want to pay the fines, or get caught. And I have a buddy that hunts at a hunting club in Louisiana that enforces those rules, and they'll charge you a fine within the club and confiscate the deer. So the club has been managed like that for over 20 years. It has some hellaciously great deer for the area it's in. And waiting list to get in, because they know how it's managed. So I think APRs do not have a place in the deer hunting world. I think if you're going to regulate it, you go to inches, because that also makes the hunters more aware of what they're shooting and understanding spread. So younger deer get to walk, because is he not? And then but also if you're in the like I said, the top 10 states, none of those use an APR or inch regulation, but they're also high protein areas that grow bigger deer, and people know there's bigger deer there, so they shoot them based off of, a lot of them shoot them based off of they're field judging and aging, and like, oh, that's a 3.5, I'm gonna let them walk, so they hunt for the area they're in. That's my thing on APR. I think it's a joke. I think that it needs to be gotten rid of everywhere. Let me know if you agree with me, disagree with me. Thank y'all. Julius Craig, Delta Lodge Outdoors. This one will be released on this one, obviously, the release date, because it'll be out live that day. But if you listened to the end of it, the release date should be the 14th, and we'll have on the 16th our third edition of the states coming out, which the third state is New Jersey. And then on the 23rd, we will have Georgia, and I think that's a good one that y'all like. Georgia has some pretty cool stuff with what their deer season entails. Thank y'all. Julius Craig, Delta Lodge Outdoors.